The morning light filtered through the dusty windows of the courthouse basement as Maintenance Supervisor Bill Chen descended the narrow stairs, his footsteps echoing in the concrete stairwell. He had expected to find Marcus Thompson already at work, methodically cleaning the floors with the same quiet precision he brought to everything. Instead, he found the small apartment door slightly ajar, an unusual sight that made his stomach tighten with concern. Marcus Thompson lay peacefully on his narrow bed, still wearing yesterday's work clothes, his weathered hands clutching a folded piece of paper against his chest. Bill approached slowly, his heart sinking as he realized the gentle man who had worked alongside them for 15 years was gone. The apartment was sparse but immaculately clean, just like Marcus himself had always been. Bill carefully pried the note from Marcus's fingers, his hands trembling slightly as he unfolded the yellowed paper. The handwriting was Marcus's careful script, each letter formed with the precision of someone who understood the weight of words. "Find Judge Hayes," it read. "Tell her the Phoenix files are in the old oak tree behind the courthouse. Sarah must know the truth before they come for her." The words made no sense to Bill. Marcus had been a quiet man who spoke little about his past, mentioning only that he was raising his teenage daughter alone after his wife died. He had never shown interest in legal matters beyond his janitorial duties, never mentioned knowing any judges personally. Bill stared at the cryptic message, wondering if grief or illness had confused the dying man's thoughts. "Where in the world are you listening to this story from? We'd love to know what time it is where you are as we begin this journey together." Within an hour, the small basement apartment filled with courthouse staff, paramedics, and Detective Ray Morrison, who treated the scene with routine efficiency. Marcus Thompson had been just another invisible worker to most of them, someone who nodded politely in hallways but rarely engaged in conversation. His sudden death seemed unremarkable, likely a heart attack given his age and the stress of single parenthood. But the note troubled Bill Chen, and despite Detective Morrison's dismissive attitude, he knew he had to honor Marcus's final request. Judge Patricia Hayes sat in her chambers reviewing the morning's family court docket when Bill Chen knocked hesitantly on her door. She barely recognized the maintenance supervisor, having exchanged perhaps a dozen words with him in her 5 years on the bench. His nervous fidgeting and the way he clutched a piece of paper suggested something important. "Marcus Thompson died this morning," Bill explained, his voice heavy with respect for the departed. Judge Hayes nodded politely, vaguely recalling the quiet janitor who cleaned her chambers after hours. She had never spoken to him directly, though she had noticed his work was always thorough and respectful. Bill handed her the note with trembling fingers, explaining how they had found Marcus clutching it against his chest. Judge Hayes read the cryptic message twice, her legal mind immediately questioning its significance. Phoenix files meant nothing to her, and she had no memory of Marcus ever mentioning legal matters. The reference to someone coming for his daughter Sarah struck her as potentially concerning, but without context, it seemed like the confused thoughts of a dying man. Meanwhile, across town, 16-year-old Sarah Thompson sat in her high school guidance counselor's office, trying to process the news of her father's sudden death. She had always known it was just the two of them against the world, but her father had been her rock, her constant source of quiet strength and wisdom. The counselor spoke gently about arrangements and support services, but Sarah's mind drifted to their small apartment and all the questions she had never thought to ask. Returning home that afternoon, Sarah wandered through rooms that suddenly felt foreign without her father's presence. She had always respected his privacy, never questioning why certain closets remained locked or why he sometimes spent hours reading late into the night. Now, alone with her grief, she began to notice details that had escaped her attention before. What part of this story resonates most with you so far? We'd love to hear your thoughts as Sarah begins to uncover her father's secrets. Judge Hayes found herself unable to concentrate on her afternoon cases, the cryptic note weighing heavily on her mind. During her lunch break, she walked to the old oak tree behind the courthouse, a massive specimen that had stood for over a century. She felt foolish searching the base of the tree, but something about the note's urgency compelled her to investigate. Her fingers found a small metal box wedged into a hollow between the roots, carefully wrapped in plastic to protect it from moisture. Inside, she discovered a thick manila folder labeled Phoenix Files in the same careful handwriting as the note. Her hands trembled as she opened it, revealing documents that made her blood run cold. The files contained federal court records from 15 years ago, detailing a massive corruption investigation that had rocked the judicial system. At the center of it all was Judge Marcus Thompson, listed as the presiding federal judge who had exposed a network of corrupt officials and organized crime figures. The photograph clipped to his personnel file showed a younger man in judicial robes, but the eyes were unmistakably those of the quiet janitor she had barely noticed. The documents revealed how Judge Thompson had courageously sentenced Vincent Carrera, a notorious crime boss, to 25 years in prison despite receiving death threats against his family. Court transcripts showed his unwavering commitment to justice even as his wife died during the trial, leaving him alone with an infant daughter. The final documents were witness protection agreements, showing how Marcus Thompson had voluntarily given up his prestigious position to disappear into anonymity. Judge Hayes sat on a courthouse bench, struggling to reconcile the heroic figure in these documents with the humble maintenance worker who had cleaned her office for years. She realized that Marcus had been hiding in plain sight, using his janitorial position to remain invisible while raising his daughter safely. The files also contained recent surveillance photos and notes, suggesting that Marcus had continued gathering intelligence even while in hiding. A newspaper clipping from 3 weeks ago made her heart race. Vincent Carrera had been released from prison on early parole. The Phoenix Files painted a vivid picture of Marcus Thompson's former life through court transcripts and personal notes. As a federal judge, he had been fearless in pursuing justice, taking on cases that other judges avoided due to political pressure or personal safety concerns. The corruption ring he had exposed involved 3 sitting judges, 2 prosecutors, and a network of organized crime figures who had been manipulating verdicts for years. Marcus's personal journal entries, tucked between official documents, revealed the human cost of his integrity. His wife Elena had been battling cancer during the Carrera trial, weakened by chemotherapy while Marcus faced daily death threats. The criminals had targeted her medical treatments, causing delays and complications that ultimately contributed to her death. Marcus blamed himself for putting justice before his family's immediate safety. The trial transcripts showed Marcus's unwavering resolve even as his world crumbled. When Carrera's lawyers offered bribes, Marcus reported them to federal authorities. When intimidation escalated to physical threats, he increased security but refused to recuse himself. His final sentencing speech was particularly powerful, declaring that the law would not bow to fear and that Carrera's crimes against society demanded the maximum penalty. After Elena's death, Marcus faced an impossible choice. Federal marshals warned him that Carrera's organization had put a contract on his life and threatened his infant daughter Sarah. The Witness Protection Program offered them new identities, but Marcus would have to abandon his judicial career forever. His journal entries from that period revealed his anguish at leaving behind everything he had worked for, but his love for Sarah made the decision inevitable. The transformation from respected federal judge to courthouse janitor had been Marcus's ultimate sacrifice. He had chosen invisibility over prestige, manual labor over intellectual challenge, all to ensure his daughter could grow up safely. For 15 years, he had lived this double life, watching from the shadows as the legal system he had once served continued without him, never knowing that one of its greatest champions was mopping floors in the basement. Detective Ray Morrison had initially dismissed Marcus Thompson's death as routine, but Judge Hayes's urgent call changed everything. When she presented the Phoenix Files in his office, Morrison's casual demeanor evaporated. He studied the documents with growing amazement, realizing he had completely misjudged the quiet maintenance worker he had encountered that morning. Morrison immediately contacted the FBI field office, knowing that a federal judge's death, even years after leaving the bench, required serious investigation. The timing of Vincent Carrera's release from prison 3 weeks earlier was too coincidental to ignore. Within hours, federal agents were reviewing the case files and assessing the potential threat to Sarah Thompson. Meanwhile, Sarah had discovered her father's hidden study behind a false wall in their apartment's utility closet. The small space contained law books, case files, and a computer with multiple encrypted folders. Her father's final letter to her lay on the desk, sealed in an envelope marked to be opened only after my death in his careful handwriting. Sarah's hands shook as she broke the seal and unfolded pages of her father's explanation. "My dearest Sarah," the letter began, "if you are reading this, then I am gone and it is time you knew the truth about who your father really was." He wrote about his former life as Judge Marcus Thompson, about the courage her mother had shown during his most dangerous case, and about the impossible choice he had made to protect her. The letter continued with details about witness protection, their new identities, and why he had chosen to work as a janitor rather than pursue legal work that might expose them. He apologized for the deception but explained that every day of their quiet life together had been a gift purchased with his former career and reputation. What emotions are you feeling as Sarah discovers her father's incredible sacrifice? We'd love to connect with our global community about the power of parental love. The FBI investigation revealed that Marcus had been living with a serious heart condition for the past 2 years, a fact he had carefully hidden from Sarah and his colleagues. Medical records showed regular visits to a cardiologist under his assumed identity, with prescriptions for medications he had been taking discreetly. His doctor had warned him that stress could prove fatal, yet Marcus had continued working and maintaining their normal routine. Agent Patricia Valdez discovered that Marcus had been experiencing increased anxiety in recent weeks, coinciding exactly with Vincent Carrera's release from prison. Surveillance footage from around the courthouse showed Marcus taking different routes to work, varying his schedule, and frequently checking over his shoulder. He had been preparing for the possibility that Carrera had found them. Marcus's computer contained detailed files documenting suspicious activities he had observed around the courthouse in recent months. He had methodically recorded license plate numbers, photographed unfamiliar faces, and noted conversations that seemed out of place. His final entries, dated just days before his death, expressed concern that Carrera's associates were conducting reconnaissance in preparation for something significant. The most heartbreaking discovery was Marcus's detailed plan for Sarah's protection after his death. He had prepared legal documents transferring guardianship to a trusted federal marshal, established a college fund using money saved from his modest salary, and written letters of recommendation based on her academic achievements. Every detail showed a father who knew his time was limited and wanted to ensure his daughter's future. Dr. Williams, Marcus's cardiologist, explained to investigators that the stress of constantly looking over his shoulder, combined with the emotional weight of keeping such enormous secrets, had likely accelerated his heart condition. The irony was devastating. Marcus had survived 15 years in hiding, only to have his heart give out just as the danger he had feared was materializing. Sarah read through her father's computer files with growing admiration and sorrow. She realized that even while working as a janitor, he had never stopped being a judge, quietly observing and documenting potential threats to justice and safety. Sarah discovered her father's most personal letter tucked inside his law school diploma frame. In it, Marcus wrote about the pride he felt watching her grow into a brilliant, compassionate young woman despite the secrets that surrounded their life. He explained how every sacrifice had been worth it to see her smile freely, pursue her dreams, and live without fear. The letter revealed that Marcus had chosen his janitorial job specifically at the courthouse because it allowed him to stay connected to the legal world he loved while remaining invisible. He described the bittersweet joy of overhearing young lawyers argue cases, watching judges make difficult decisions, and knowing that the system he had once served continued to seek justice even without him. Marcus wrote about the loneliness of carrying such enormous secrets, of being unable to share his professional knowledge or legal expertise with colleagues who might have benefited from his experience. Yet he emphasized that every quiet moment with Sarah, every homework session, every proud parent moment at her school events had filled the void left by his abandoned career. The most powerful section addressed Sarah's future. Marcus expressed his absolute confidence in her intelligence and integrity, qualities he had observed as she grew up. He encouraged her to pursue whatever career brought her joy, knowing that she carried the best parts of both her parents within her. Sarah's grief transformed into something deeper as she understood the magnitude of her father's love. She realized that the man she had known as a dedicated but humble worker was actually one of the most courageous people who had ever lived. His willingness to sacrifice everything for her safety represented the purest form of parental devotion. As Sarah finished reading, she heard cars pulling up outside their apartment. Through the window, she saw black SUVs and men in suits approaching the building. Her father's warnings about danger suddenly became terrifyingly real. How do you think Sarah should handle this moment of discovering her father's true heroism while facing immediate danger? Share your thoughts with our community around the world. The men approaching Sarah's apartment were FBI agents led by Agent Valdez, arriving to ensure her safety after discovering the extent of Marcus's surveillance files. Sarah's initial terror gave way to relief when they identified themselves and explained their connection to her father's case. Agent Valdez gently explained that Marcus had been right to worry about Vincent Carrera's release. Back at the courthouse, Judge Hayes continued studying the Phoenix files and made a startling discovery. Hidden among the older documents were recent additions Marcus had been making, detailed observations about current criminal activities he had witnessed while working as a janitor. His unique position had given him access to conversations and meetings that revealed ongoing corruption within the local legal system. Marcus had documented suspicious meetings between certain lawyers and known associates of Vincent Carrera. He had photographed individuals who had no legitimate business in the courthouse but appeared regularly in restricted areas. Most significantly, he had recorded conversations suggesting that Carrera's early release had been orchestrated through bribery and influence peddling involving current officials. The files revealed that Marcus had been building a new case against Carrera's organization, using his invisible status as a maintenance worker to gather evidence that would have been impossible for active law enforcement to obtain. He had identified a network of corruption that extended from street-level criminals to high-ranking courthouse personnel, all working to facilitate Carrera's return to power. Judge Hayes realized that Marcus's death, while apparently natural, had occurred at the worst possible time. His evidence was nearly complete, requiring only final documentation before he could safely turn it over to federal authorities. The timing suggested that either Marcus had pushed himself too hard trying to finish his investigation, or somehow Carrera had discovered his activities and applied pressure that contributed to his fatal heart attack. The most chilling discovery was Marcus's final entry, written the night before his death. He expressed concern that someone had been asking questions about the courthouse maintenance staff and worried that his cover might be compromised. His last words were a prayer that if anything happened to him, the evidence would find its way to honest hands. As news of Marcus's true identity spread through the courthouse, staff members began sharing memories that took on new significance. Court clerk Maria Santos remembered how Marcus always seemed to know exactly which legal documents she needed, often retrieving files from storage with remarkable efficiency. She had assumed he was simply experienced, never realizing he understood the legal significance of every case. Bailiff Robert Chun recalled conversations where Marcus had offered surprisingly insightful comments about complex legal procedures. When Robert had struggled with a difficult custody case involving jurisdictional issues, Marcus had casually mentioned a federal precedent that proved crucial to the resolution. Robert had been grateful but never questioned how a janitor possessed such specialized knowledge. Security guard James Liu shared how Marcus had occasionally pointed out security vulnerabilities in the courthouse, suggesting improvements with the precision of someone who understood both building operations and potential threats. His recommendations had always been practical and effective, leading to enhanced safety protocols that everyone had credited to James's own observations. Secretary Linda Park remembered Marcus's gentle way with distressed family members who visited the courthouse. He had an uncanny ability to calm upset children and worried parents, often knowing exactly which family services resources to recommend. His compassion and knowledge had seemed natural for someone who worked around legal proceedings, but now she understood it came from years of experience presiding over family cases. Most remarkably, several attorneys remembered instances where Marcus had been cleaning nearby during their most challenging moments of legal research. Without directly offering advice, he had somehow always managed to leave relevant law books open to helpful sections, or accidentally knocked over files that contained exactly the precedents they needed. They had dismissed these coincidences as remarkable luck, never suspecting deliberate guidance. The courthouse staff began to realize that for 15 years, one of the legal system's greatest minds had been walking among them, quietly contributing to justice while remaining completely invisible. FBI agents moved Sarah to a secure location while they processed Marcus's intelligence files. Agent Valdez explained that her father's evidence was more comprehensive than anything law enforcement had been able to gather independently. His unique position had allowed him to document corruption that would have taken years of undercover operations to uncover through traditional methods. The Phoenix Files contain detailed financial records showing how Vincent Carrera's organization had maintained influence during his imprisonment through a network of lawyers, clerks, and even judges who had accepted bribes in exchange for favorable treatment of associates. Marcus had photographed documents, recorded conversations, and traced money transfers with the skill of a seasoned investigator. Judge Hayes worked with federal prosecutors to review the evidence, amazed by Marcus's meticulous documentation. Every piece of information was carefully corroborated with multiple sources, presented with the legal precision of someone who understood exactly what would be required for successful prosecution. His years of judicial experience had made him an ideal intelligence gatherer. The investigation revealed that Marcus had been preparing to emerge from hiding and testify against the corruption network. His final computer entries showed plans to contact federal authorities within days of his death, suggesting he had decided that protecting the legal system was worth risking his own safety and Sarah's security. Meanwhile, Vincent Carrera's surveillance team had indeed located Marcus, but their orders had been to watch and gather information rather than take direct action. Carrera had wanted to understand the full extent of any evidence against him before making his move. The crime boss's cautious approach had ironically given Marcus time to complete most of his investigation. Sarah learned from Agent Valdez that her father had arranged for her protection regardless of what happened to him. Federal marshals had been briefed about her situation, safe houses had been prepared, and financial arrangements had been made to ensure her education could continue. Even facing death, Marcus had thought of everything. If this story has touched your heart, let us know where you're listening from around the world. Your father's love for you might be different, but it's just as powerful. The breakthrough came when Agent Valdez discovered Marcus's final safeguard, a digital dead man's switch he had programmed to activate 72 hours after his last computer login. As federal agents watched in amazement, automated emails began sending Marcus's complete evidence files to multiple law enforcement agencies, media outlets, and judicial oversight committees simultaneously. Marcus had anticipated that his natural death might be mistaken for foul play, or that his evidence might be suppressed if it fell into the wrong hands. His technological solution ensured that within minutes, dozens of honest officials across the country possessed copies of his 15-year investigation into Vincent Carrera's corruption network. The automated system also sent a comprehensive letter to the Federal Bureau of Investigation director, explaining Marcus's true identity, his years in witness protection, and his final decision to sacrifice his safety for justice. The letter requested immediate protection for Sarah and asked that his judicial pension be transferred to ensure her future education and security. Vincent Carrera was arrested at his luxury apartment as FBI agents executed simultaneous raids across 3 states. The evidence Marcus had gathered was so thorough that prosecutors immediately filed charges for racketeering, bribery, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. Several courthouse employees were also arrested, including 2 judges and a prosecutor who had been receiving payments for favorable decisions. Judge Hayes received a special delivery that afternoon, a final letter from Marcus addressed specifically to her. In it, he explained that he had chosen her to receive the Phoenix Files because her reputation for integrity reminded him of his younger self. He asked her to watch over Sarah if needed and to remember that justice sometimes requires ordinary people to make extraordinary sacrifices. The letter concluded with Marcus's reflection that his years as a janitor had taught him more about true service than his time on the federal bench. He had learned that dignity came not from position or recognition, but from faithfully doing what was right regardless of personal cost. His final wish was that his example might inspire others to serve justice in whatever capacity they found themselves. 3 months later, Sarah Thompson stood in the courthouse memorial garden where her father had eaten his solitary lunches for 15 years. The bronze plaque dedicated to Judge Marcus Thompson read simply, "A servant of justice who proved that heroism often wears humble clothes." Federal prosecutors had used his evidence to secure convictions against Vincent Carrera and 17 associates, effectively dismantling the corruption network he had spent years documenting. Judge Hayes had arranged for Sarah to receive her father's full judicial pension, ensuring her college education and financial security. More importantly, she had become Sarah's unofficial mentor, helping her navigate the complex emotions of pride and grief that came with learning her father's true story. Sarah had decided to study law, inspired by her father's example of quiet courage and unwavering integrity. The courthouse staff had transformed Marcus's small basement apartment into a resource center for families navigating the legal system. Court clerk Maria Santos volunteered there regularly, offering guidance with the same patient wisdom she had learned from watching Marcus help visitors over the years. The space honored his memory by continuing his practice of serving others without seeking recognition. Detective Morrison completed his investigation, officially ruling Marcus's death as natural causes accelerated by stress from his heroic efforts to protect both his daughter and the justice system. His final report recommended that Marcus receive posthumous recognition for his extraordinary service to law enforcement, noting that his sacrifice had prevented countless future crimes. Sarah kept her father's journals and legal books, reading them whenever she needed to feel close to him. She understood now that their quiet life together had been the greatest victory he could have achieved. Every peaceful day, every moment of normal childhood he had given her, represented his triumph over the forces that had tried to destroy their family. As Sarah walked through the memorial garden, she felt her father's presence in every corner of the courthouse where he had served justice in silence. Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovering that extraordinary heroes walk among us every day, often invisible until their true worth is finally revealed.